And welcome to Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForrest, and happy to be joined, as I am every Monday and Thursday, by the great Mike Jones. And I know how you must feel, Mike Jones, because you still share the same passion that you had many, many years ago for the game of baseball. So not only do we have the resumption, which a lot of people got the shakes there, they were kind of having to inject themselves with morphine to get from Sunday all the way to Thursday. Without once you get the feel for the tournament, then you can't wait to send in your next bet. I don't know that we needed that long of a layoff, but nonetheless, that resumes tonight, and then it's opening day around Major League Baseball. Michael, I mean, how excited are you? The only problem here, we both live in South Florida, and I believe this, that the Miami Marlins have sucked the romance right out of opening day, as evidenced by the fact that they will not sell out, even though tickets are dropping in terms of what it's going to cost you to go to one of the most celebrated occasions, if you're a baseball fan, that you'll experience at any time and all season long. Opening day tickets now $20, down from 25 yesterday, to go see the Marlins and a sensational pitching matchup.
Yes.
Return of Sandy Alcantara. Paul Skeens, year number 2 after being Rookie of the Year. Many people have him. I would imagine he's a favorite in the National League to win the Cy Young Award.
Yeah.
And yet, in the city of indifference here, Miami, also known as South Florida, nobody gives a flying fuck. So how are you on that note, Mike Jones?
I'm good. I do care. And it's just this has always been one of the more exciting days for gamblers and basically for a fan of a sport that every team usually goes on this particular day. It's changed over the years. And it's just the excitement has always been there for the America's pastime, which has kind of changed in the last 2 decades. But for an old timer like me, I kind of get into today, and a lot of my friends do too. So,
All right, I have a baseball play. I'm not sure how comfortable I feel giving it out, and it's just in line with what has been a hideous pattern in my betting recommendations, because I'm ashamed to admit this to the Bury Your Bookie fans out there, and nobody wants to hear any of your bullshit about how your bracket is fucked up or you got annihilated in the first round. It's one of those questions, Mike. I don't know. I mean, you and your wife have sounds like a very close and understanding relationship. But when she says something while you're watching a game, I mean, or she asks you a question, and then you say, "Well, what do you think?" You're not interested in the answer. And no one's interested in where you stand with your brackets, except for the fact that I need all of the favorites tonight to win, to have a shot there in the pool that you got me into. And so I do feel obligated that currently holding second position there, it's not a ton of capital, but a lot of fun, because I always say this, and it's true. If you bet even $1 on a ball game or a sporting event, it ratchets up your enjoyment and entertainment level, I would say, exponentially. No?
yes, absolutely. And
All
again,
all the
there's a weird scenario saying I've tried to tell people I lived in Vegas. It's not necessarily about the money. It's about being right before it
Yes,
starts. It's
absolutely.
like we're always wrong when we walk into our households. Nothing we can do is right. But
Yeah.
for that 3 hours, if we got a chance to pick something that started from nothing and we can say we were right on it, sometimes that's even more gratifying than even the money. So you just keep it going. Let's hope the favorites come in your space, and second place right now, maybe first place. It's being right. It's beating the other, as many people that are in the pool, and it lifts you up a little bit. So I think that's kind of what I've always thought as a gambler's mindset. Not necessarily you're going to win and you're going to lose all the time, but you're right for that moment that you pick the winner. So, and I think that's kind of what people want. That's that self gratification today of all that the way of being right.
Yeah, I know. It's absolutely fantastic. It validates the fact that you might know something about sports.
Yeah.
All right. Which, let's face it, was I making an educated guess on any of these games? No. Was I making a completely uninformed wild stab? For the most part, yes. And then the worst part about being a gambler, and you need to have your own opinion, Mike Jones. I think you would completely agree with me. You
Mm-hmm.
need to have your own opinion. And this, you know, eh, the business of listening to other guys and all of these different I mean, we try to give you what we think, and maybe it influences you, but you can't let other people make all of your choices for you. Would you agree that would
Yeah, I
rule
think it
number
takes.
one?
You know what's funny? It's when I pick a game and I lose, I'm upset. But when someone else picks that game and he loses for me and I take it, I'm really upset
Yeah.
because it wasn't my mistake.
And
I
you
think
paid for it.
that's where the handicapper from paying the piper for the handicapper is frustrating for the player. If you're winning, it's all well and good. It's like that offensive lineman you don't hear about until the holding call comes in.
Yeah.
When the holding call comes in is when he loses, that's the problem. And it emphasizes more when you're not picking it and losing than when you are. At least you can blame yourself. Now you got
Yeah.
to blame somewhere else, and it's just very weird.
Especially painful at a racetrack where I often, after seeing a tip horse go up completely in smoke, this one's guaranteed. I tell you what, I know the assistant trainer is a distant cousin of my ex-wife, and they give you the horse. You go all in thinking this guy's been wrong his entire lifetime, so I'm going to go ahead and assume he's going to hit one. Horse runs up the track, and I immediately text out, lose my number, please. Don't ever give me another piece of information.
Yeah.
All right. If you are betting, and people, we'll get into Mike's picks here for tonight and some baseball stuff also with Mike Jones. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for betting all of this madness that's taking place. The next couple of days, we have it again, and then over the weekend. Even if your bracket is busted, BetOnline has more ways to stay in action with a free Sweet 16. You better get in on this quickly. Bracket and live betting on every remaining tournament game. They have the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to MLB gets underway today, NHL, MMA, whatever it is you want to bet on, you can do it with BetOnline. They continue to be your number one sports betting source from every Cinderella story, Michael, to every hat trick. BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, every win. Bet Online. The game starts here. All right, let's take a look at these games. Mike Jones, how heavily involved will you be tonight on the NCAA tournament games? Let's begin there.
Well, I gave out Monday on our earlier show before Bury Your Bookie. I will tell you that I'm still gung ho on Arkansas. I think there's a very good possibility they're going to get Thiero back, their leading scorer. That he averages 15-9 a game. He's missed the last 8 games. They've played very well without him. They got Flan back in the leading into the tournament. He's played well. You kind of think with all the eggs got now, they go 9 deep on the bench, gives them that little added depth. It's a really good matchup. I like the coaching matchup. I almost like Arkansas to win the game.
Wow.
I think you're going to see the line come down once they announce this Thiero is going to play. I mean, he's the leading scorer on the team, averaging 15-9 a game. I mean, the line's 5.5. It's holding. It was 6.5 when I originally liked it on Monday. And I think people love Texas Tech, and there's a lot to love. But North Carolina, Wilmington, and Drake, against Kansas and St. John's, the first 2 teams each of them have played, might be a little competition level, a little difference there. And I just like Cal in these moments, and taking his 4th team to the Sweet 16, a ton of experience tournament wise. I think he'll get the kids going, and I really like Arkansas tonight, which makes me scared a little bit, but I do like them.
All right. Let's figure that 5.5 points, a generous allotment for a team that seems to be getting hot. Like you said, they're getting their players back. And that was a big issue early in the year, maybe a little deceptive, the idea. People keep going back, right? You're not only as good as your last film necessarily, because they all remember that 0-5 start, especially
Yeah.
with the fanfare that usually surrounds Calipari. And he's going to get more coverage for starting out his first year. He leaves Kentucky. So that story ballooned, and I think it left a lasting impression with a lot of people. But it's a much better team than they were
Yeah.
at that point in the season. And if they get this kid back and he's effective tonight, you would have to consider that you're in there with a shot. All right, so we have Arkansas getting 5 and a hook from Texas Tech. What else are you looking at?
Going out east in Newark, again, the late game, Duke is just so good. They have the talent. I think they're getting it done. Arizona, looked a little lazy in the early part of the Oregon game. I like the way they match up against this team, but for some reason, I just think the travel, the playing the late game. Richard Jefferson brought up a great point about them getting scheduled. The Duke favorite that they're getting to play in the East, and they got to travel, playing the last game on a Sunday to playing Thursday. Now, granted, the kids are young and they'll be able to handle all this. Arizona's traveled the whole year, but when does it wear on them? Kind of like Duke a little bit, having to pull the trigger, of the games that I see there. Duke would probably be a team that went from 8 to 9.5 already. Someone knows something I don't know. This game could get away from Arizona if they don't play. I don't think they match up on the interior the way that what Duke has, and I didn't like the way they sat there big at the end of the game last week. Something might be going on there. Arizona had a chance to put a game away, and they were getting beat up on the inside. And Oregon, basically, their big guy sat down. He had 4 fouls, granted, but you would have put him back in the game. And then these games get close again, like they do. And then teams hold on to leads, get a little antsy at crunch time. So I'm going to lean a little bit toward Duke there.
All right, so you like Duke? You had the dog in the Arkansas-Texas Tech game, laying them 9 and hook. A very generous 9 and hook. Duke's margin of victory, humongous. I believe it's 65 points so far for the 2 games, something in that neighborhood. So winning games by 30 plus. And the odd stat that we were talking about, I think earlier in the week, was that Duke is the first team in a long time to lead the regular season in scoring differential and then have a 30-plus margin in their first 2 games of the NCAA tournament. The previous team to do that since 1985 in the expansion was a Duke team, I believe, in the late 90s. And yet only I think it's like 1 for 19 that the team that had those 2 conditions ended up winning the tournament. 2 for 19 so far.
Crazy.
So as impressive as they've been in the first couple of rounds, that doesn't necessarily, it might be a premature evaluation to concede them the title, although many people are looking at the way they perform so far. And as you said, Mike Jones, you're not making the assertion that Duke got favorable treatment in the tournament from the committee, are you? You wouldn't insinuate that.
Well, you would think with a Carolina head of the tournament, it wouldn't happen. But boy, it sure looks like it a little bit. But yeah, it's Duke. They love Duke. Good for college basketball. The love hate.
Yeah. All right. Either of the other 2 games attract you?
Yeah. You got to think Pace is going to take on the BYU Alabama game. Both teams shoot the ball very well. I think this is another one of these games of contrast in styles, but I think that the players are a little bit better at Alabama. Don't know that I want to lay the 5 there. BYU's playing so well. A lot of, if you had to pick a Cinderella, a lot of teams have said there's guys who prognosticators who out there thought BYU could make the Final Four. Seen nothing that to shy away from those guys being wrong, but I kind of think this is going to be a large paced game, and we're going to see if we get the extra foul shots at the end. But boy, over sure looks sweet in this game. I think both teams can get in the 90s pretty easily, and I think the pace will be fast. I think you'll see a lot of possessions with the shot going up before 20 on the shot clock. And I think when you add to those possessions, the analytics crew would say probably if they can make shots, take your chances that you get some overs. And, these kids knock down open threes a lot more than I ever did or you ever did in our time. And so once you start playing that grind up and down, when you're a great offensive team, where does it usually lack? Some of the energy trying to get out and cover happens on the defensive end with these great offensive teams that has all the success. So I'm going to lean a little bit toward over in this game and, take the 3 bets for tonight that way.
All right. And it's kind of stunning. A lot of people were looking at the over-under total in that game saying, wow, 175 for a college basketball game? You have to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And you're looking, if you just do the math from the average scores that were posted by these teams during the season, Alabama's averaging like 90 points a game or something like that. And you're looking at BYU averaging 81. So that equates out to 171. So if they just are slightly ahead of that, you're thinking these 2 teams both play that same kind of up-tempo style. So Mike Jones going in with the over.
It'd be interesting to see which of these 2 teams try to slow it down.
Yeah,
it looked like that. St. Mary's tried to do a little bit of that. If they get behind, they're going to take. You're going to create the pace. Alabama won't slow. They feel they're the best at running in the country. They're going to keep going. BYU, whether if they get down 10 or 12, are they going to try to say we got to shoot to get back up and back in the game? Or does BYU change tempo and get away from what brought them there? I don't see it happening. I think that these kids want to play. I just, the number's there for a reason. And sometimes you think, oh, way too high, let's go under. I don't know. Sometimes they know a little bit, as Brent Musburger would say, what do they know in the desert that we don't know? That's kind of my little take here.
All right, sounds good. Now, take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack if you can afford it. I don't
Yeah.
care. Major League Baseball. I was mentioned this, and I've been talking about this on some other shows that I do in South Florida. They've just sucked the romance out of opening day. You know the team's going to be terrible all year long. I think they have a relatively minuscule over/under total, and you would really have to debate it because the old adage in baseball is everybody's going to win 60, lose 60, and it's what you do in the other 42 that
Hmm.
constitute the difference of whether you had a successful season or not. I'm not even sure that the Marlins win 60 this year. So, I mean, it just seems to have no appeal. Tickets for these games here locally in our home state and home city are going for $20 for opening day, and they won't even sell out like a 37,000 seat stadium. And then tomorrow will be the real indicator of how much indifference there is, because I would imagine they'd be lucky to draw 6,000 to subsequent games, unless the Yankees come to town sometime this year, or maybe
Hmm.
to a lesser extent the Red Sox. But there is reason to get excited. I actually, in my initial perusal of the pitching matchups today, how much do you base your opinion on pitching matchups in the modern era, Mike Jones, now that starters routinely are yanked in the fifth inning?
It's interesting. I think the bet is the first five if you're betting on a pitcher.
Interesting. Yeah.
Maybe lay the half run, and they don't even drop the half run. If you get laying 140 half a run, you might be laying 115 on laying a half a run. So and you only get the push on a tie. You see these lines that are being trying to create this, but yeah, when COVID happened, we were shocked. I tell this story and I'll try to make it quick. I was out in Vegas 2 years ago and the baseball was up, and I was at at Resorts World, and I looked up and there was no starting pitcher listed. And the game was about ready to start. It was the Mets and the Dodgers, and I'm looking for the pitcher to see who's going for the Mets because I see the Dodgers pitcher. You got him on ready to throw the pitch, and I asked them. I said, "Who's pitching?" They said, "Doesn't matter." I said, "What do you mean it doesn't matter?" And I looked, and they actually couldn't even find the pitcher in the computer. It
Wow.
wasn't not forget on a tote board. The computer didn't have it. And I was with a friend of mine who's a lifelong baseball bettor, and we just looked at each other and said, "Wow, it's changed." And basically, what they do is if the pitcher changes, the line changes, and you get that initial line change on the previous bet, and they calculate that into your ticket. So baseball has changed dramatically as far as a bettor goes over the last, since COVID.
Do you,
Um,
do you
I,
believe in the streak
I,
theory? The streak theory that's always out there. Team
yeah,
wins three in a row or
yeah,
loses
oh
three in
yeah,
a row.
I believe in the streaks. I believe in all that. Today I'm going to give you a couple of picks for
Okay.
the team wins, but I think opening day has that luster to bet because the pitcher's not going 7 and 8 innings. So I kind of more or less was gearing my handicapping for today and the show more on the season wins, and one of them I'm going to
All
come
right.
up with is a real interesting one out in Oakland. So 71.5 Oakland. They were kind of buyers in this offseason and re-signed some players that you thought that normally would leave Oakland. Looking at, I think the over 71.5 is the play here. One, the Angels are a little bit down. Two, the division overall. The Houston is usually towards in the 90s. They're lower at 86. The Mariners are everybody's so on. So I think the A's are a team that will not sell off at the All-Star break, being that they're trying to build a team to bring to Nevada, to Las Vegas, to get that hype coming when they go. So to me, I'm going to go over 71.5 and say picking up Severino as a number one starter, and that they're going to hang in there and be somewhat competitive even second half of the season. So I like over 71.5.
They are surprisingly competitive in some years, even while incurring long losing streaks. They've been much more representative than you would think they were. Not quite the Tampa Bay Rays, but
Mm-hmm.
they've had their share of success in spite of the fact that it looks like they're completely fueled by self-sabotage and lack of interest in putting any money into the franchise. All right, so Oakland over the total for the season. Mike Jones giving you something. You'll be cashing this sometime in early October. And it's always exciting. It makes following every game of much more significance than it otherwise would be. I've had any number of occasions to be rooting in a season-long total in Major League Baseball, and it kind of gives you a reason to enjoy that Tuesday night game against some nondescript team where there are two starters that you wouldn't recognize if you had their baseball cards in your wallet. And all of a sudden you have a rooting interest in this thing because you have a season-long bet and it's not costing you money each and every night. All right, well, what else are you looking at, Mike Jones?
I'm going up with the Boston. Notoriously Yankee fans in the family, all this, the rivalry, all that stuff with Boston. Had a down year last year. I like them this year, improving the pitching, getting the lefty from Chicago, Walker Buehler. John Henry is just a smart baseball guy overall. I can't keep the Red Sox down. 86.5 still doesn't make them a playoff team, but it makes them competitive in most games. I'm going to go over 86.5 with the Red Sox too.
Were they not incurring all kinds of problems early last season for like
Mm-hmm.
much of the first half, and then kind of bounced back and ended up, I believe, at 500, 81 and 81. So
Mm-hmm.
bottom in the AL East, a tough division, but only slight improvement over what was kind of a down year for most of the season.
Yep.
And they end up in the winner's circle for one Mike Jones. I mean, I like one game today, and you're probably going to laugh at me because I am drowning in a sea of chalk here. I need all of the favorites for that bracket pool so we can go have dinner together somewhere on the pool's ticket. And I like the Houston Astros today against the New York Mets. So the debut of Juan Soto will be much celebrated. The Mets, however, are starting Clayton Holmes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that working out? I mean, this was a guy who was getting shelled, who was putting Aaron Boone into the house of shame last year when he was the Yankees closer. Now, he came back later in the year in a different role. He was a setup guy or a seventh inning guy, and he distinguished himself pretty well. He was getting people out.
Yep.
But he hasn't been a starter since he was in Little League, and he's the opening day starter for the New York Mets on the road against my man Framber Valdez, who I think is always worth a sniff when he's on the mound, and quits himself very, very well. Houston depleted a little bit, and a lot of people think they're not going to have a very good season. Very little of their core left. I guess very little is appropriate because it's probably just Altuve. But I don't know. It's just a question: am I willing to lay minus 132 on Framber Valdez to beat Clayton Holmes, who I think doesn't get out of the third inning? What do you think, Mike Jones?
I like it. I think that the line is only 132 because it's the Yankees. I think it's
Oh, the Mets. It's the Mets.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, the Mets. I meant the Mets. The fact that the Mets are going in that direction this early at a 90.5 win total, I think is really it's. I like the play. I do.
Why not dig up the Eck? I mean, if you're going to
Yeah,
start a guy who was a closer
yeah,
last year.
yeah. That's a very weird start, and there's something going on there. But yeah,
That's the number one guy.
yeah, and he's going to pitch 3 innings probably. So you're going to get early pen probably. Maybe if what happens if he gets beat up a little bit, they're not going to run him in just
Remember
because.
when he was blowing every potential
Yeah,
save for the Yankees? I mean, he would come in
yeah,
and he literally was the human arson squad,
yeah.
and always leading off with disaster. We had
Mhm.
a pitcher here, Antonio Alfonseca,
Yeah.
who had a high save total with the Marlins. They were then, I believe, the Florida Marlins. But I mean, he would routinely come in a 3-0 game as a closer, and then immediately load the bases on 2 walks and a hit batter. And then some guy would drill one to left center field, and it would end up scoring 2 runs and leaving runners on second and third. And before the guy got a single out, you were sitting there thinking that this game's a disaster. And then he would come back and strike out the side. So yeah, I mean that was Clayton Holmes though, except for the striking out the side part. I mean he was looking for an exit on the side of the building somewhere. As Aaron Boone, he was burying what already was a shot reputation as a field manager. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I kind of like that one. I have a lean there towards the Houston Astros. I mean, it seems ugly and contrary to everything that you have in terms of your religious degenerate beliefs, Mike Jones. But to need all favorites in the basketball games, they only have to win outright. So
Right.
all of these games that have
Well, I
points.
mean, I think tonight you're in good shape. Maybe without obviously, I think Arkansas can, but the other three I think are probably going to win. I mean, Florida, Maryland. You got to think Florida got their wake up call Sunday.
Yeah.
Maryland, gets a buzzer beater, which some people say in the olden days might have been called a walk.
Yeah.
So probably shouldn't even be there anyway. But I like Maryland's team. I think they're good, but now we
It
see. We
didn't
get to the
impress me
Super
that much. I mean, obviously they weren't having their best game in that game against New Mexico, but I didn't see this spark that would inspire me to believe they were going to be champions. So,
Right.
I mean, they are a 4th seed, so it's not
Right.
like they were expected to be in
Mm-hmm.
the Final Four. But I need
Right.
them to go down tonight, Mike Jones. You need them to go down tonight too. You're partners with me on this ticket, so
Yeah.
let's bring them home.
Yeah. I mean, it's tomorrow you got a fascinating games too. Tennessee, Kentucky. Kentucky's beat them twice. They're 4.5 point dog. in I think they're playing that in Indianapolis. Where are they playing that game? Indianapolis.
I don't know.
Yeah, so it's like it's very that's a amazing game. We're gonna be close ties. SEC familiarity. I think it's going to be great. You got the two, Purdue, Auburn. Auburn might have an injury. I think one of their players is supposed to be questionable, and Michigan's played very well. I mean, these are interesting matchups. Yeah, you don't have Cinderella in there, and they've talked about what we talked about a week prior to this one happened when I said the first three seeds would carry on, and it would be hard for for Cinderella to show up in this tournament because I thought the NIL, I brought it right up, and now they're talking about it. So, but I like when you get these solid matchups. Yeah, there's not that big sleeper. There's no Butler in there, or there's no Kent State or George Mason, but you have the really good teams that have gotten through. So these games should all be pretty interesting.
All right, let's hope so. Let's hope we come out on a winning edge and then our winning side. And Framber Valdez to outduel Clayton Holmes and make his first start as suspect as possible. So the Mets, who feel like every team, it seems like that goes overboard. I mean, right now you would have to say the exception would be the Dodgers. They buy everybody and they get all of these Japanese players out fighting and out dueling and paying more money and offering more than virtually anybody else is capable of doing. And they go to Japan, play 2 games, get all their money back. It's amazing. What a great situation that is for them. But yeah, I mean, people thinking that the Mets were spending all this money on Juan Soto and others. They brought in, other players as well to try and balance out what was. I mean, not they re-signed Alonso, but I think they're going down today, Mike Jones.
Yeah.
I really do.
It could happen.
Yeah,
it could happen. I'll give you one too if we can end it on another baseball note. So explain this to me. When was the last time the St. Louis Cardinals were 75.5? Are they sellers at the trade deadline? Like 75.5. Wow, what a number. That's the lowest I think I could ever remember them being.
Fabled franchise, well supported by their loyal fan base in St. Louis.
So I'm going to go opening day Minnesota Twins as my opening day pick.
Nice.
30 in St. Louis and go under 75.5 and think that they're going to be sellers at the deadline.
Excellent stuff. As always, Mike Jones, Big Gunner. That's coming up again next Tuesday. And you got Russell Wilson now to talk
We do. Russell Wilson, real quick, makes me think that they're probably not going to rush to a quarterback at 3. Maybe the best player available now, which I think is better off for a lot of us older Giant people. I think the younger Gen Z, younger generation, they want that lifelong quarterback, that 10-year guy. But Brian Daboll and Joe Shane don't have 10 years to go. They got to get it going now. I think Russell Wilson gives them an opportunity to win now. I think they addressed the things they needed to address. And what's really fascinating is the over-under is 4.5. Wow. I mean, that's just crazy to me to think that the New York Giants are 4.5. So we're 6-8 with our left tackle healthy the last 2 years. So it's going to come down to being able to protect Russell Wilson and the health of the offensive line and the team in general. But I think we've repaired our defense. We were leading the league in sacks till our guys got banged up last year. It's about being healthy in football. If the Giants stay healthy, we're going to be okay and be competitive and maybe save these guys a job. If we get decimated with injuries because we don't have the lack of depth, we're in trouble. That's what it's going to come down to. But we think Russell Wilson is a start to help that position be much more effective for the next season. But I think we still need to seriously look at the quarterback for the future.
Tuesday, 10 o'clock. You get this stuff with Mike Jones plus his handicapping expertise. Always a pleasure, my friend. Enjoy opening day of baseball. I know you're old school like me. I really have had the life sucked out of me by this Marlins franchise and the lack of interest here in any kind of attention being paid to the local baseball franchise. But I would imagine I'll latch on to something, largely due to wagering during the course of the season. So go Framber Valdez and the Houston Astros and the Minnesota Twins with Pablo Lopez. Big ex-Marlin factor around the league. Two ex-Marlins are the starters, opening day starters for their respective teams because you got Zach Gallen going for the Diamondbacks also. All right. Great stuff, Mike Jones. As always, thanks so much for being with us. Have fun watching the games.
Thanks for having me. Enjoy the games.
All right. Mike Jones, ladies and gentlemen. That's going to do it for us. Been a pleasure being with you. And we will see you next time tomorrow, Degenerate Friday edition of Bury Your Bookie.